In most public places in Illinois, it's illegal to smoke indoors. It's been that way since 2008, but the legalization of recreational marijuana in 2020 creates a bit of a loophole, and it's up to Chicago and other cities to decide what to do next. Here's more with Tom Schuba at the Chicago Sun-Times. January 2020 is going to be very interesting. Marijuana in the state of Illinois is going to be legalized, and this piece you wrote for the Sun-Times talks about the possibility of us having weed cafes. How is that?
There's a pretty small provision in this huge piece of legislation that allows for local municipalities to permit these on-site consumption businesses. And it's pretty loosely worded. This is wide-ranging, and it really is up to each locality to determine what types of businesses this could be, what types of methods for consuming marijuana will be allowed. So this could go to typical businesses that already have licenses, like a bar or a coffee shop, and it could go beyond that to a new standalone business like a hookah bar, or even as far as like a movie theater, which we've seen in Denver pop up.
And I know there's people out there that aren't exactly happy about this. What's the opposition got to say?
The person who I talked to is Kevin Sabet, who is a former employee of the White House and who's president of an organization called Smart Approaches to Marijuana that was really the leaders in the opposition to this bill as it went along over the last year. He says it goes too far, and he says that a specific aspect of it really goes too far, and that's basically an exemption from this law, the Smoke-Free Illinois Act, passed in 2008, and prohibits smoking in public spaces. But this exemption will allow municipalities, if they want to allow it, the actual smoking of marijuana in public spaces. And he said that's, basically said that's absurd, that they would go back and they would go back to allowing smoking in public places.
And how are other states handling this issue of marijuana inside, restaurants, comedy clubs, things like that?
A lot of states are moving on this, basically, and have either passed legislation to allow this or are in the process of negotiating rules to regulate it. So it's, as states continue to legalize, the ones that have legalized are starting to go back and pass these sort of trailer bills that will allow these public consumption spaces. But most of them, like Illinois, require local opt-in.
And this issue becomes really interesting when you take into consideration people coming into Chicago and the state of Illinois for tourism.
In Chicago and in places like Rosemont, where there is a huge amount of tourists coming through there. The issue is tourists will be able to buy marijuana, but they won't have anywhere to smoke it or to use it or to ingest it because hotels don't allow it. It can't be done in cars. It can't be done in public places outside. So what are you going to do with these people who are, hopefully going to be a good portion of this revenue, right? Especially in Chicago, recently we've had these huge tourism numbers. So it's like, how are we going to accommodate these folks? What about the people at the casino who are tired of gambling and they want to go and smoke a joint because they lost a bunch of money and they want to wind down? Yeah. Where can they do that? It's really going to have to be seriously considered, I think, by a lot of these municipalities, especially ones with tourists.
It's going to be really interesting to watch. Well, you can read up more on this topic on the Chicago Sun-Times website, chicago.suntimes.com. We're also going to have a link to it on our website.